have tried to make and publish this video after all of the exams are over. So I am hoping that you're watching this after the exams are over, because in today's video I'm going to be recommending you quite a few fiction books from various genres that are appropriate for you, my lovely teenagers. They're easy to read, they're so much fun, and if your exams are over, count this as my treat to you and congratulations on getting done with them. Let's get into the video. Hey you guys, welcome back to the channel. I hope you're doing very nice. I'm sending a lot of hugs and prosperity to all of you. Hi, if you're new, welcome to the channel. I really hope you enjoy the content, and if you do, please do consider subscribing. Just one thing before we start, if you regularly watch my videos, then there's going to be a lot of repetition in this video for recommendations, and I don't personally enjoy repeating my recommendation multiple times. I don't want to make stale content, and so I don't like to recommend the same book over and over again. However, I have not made one of these videos since a long time, and I did want all of these titles to be listed in one place, so you can just click on one video and know that, oh, this is probably the book that I want to read. So if you're a regular viewer, please do stay tuned, because I do have a reading vlog coming for you guys where I'm reading new books, and I have another video coming for you guys where I'm going to be recommending new books. But for now, let's dive into the teenage book recommendations I have, because you guys deserve this off time after the pressure of the exams. Let's get into it. First and foremost, let's start with a little bit of fantasy. So this is actually the fourth book in the entire series, but you can read this book as the first book for the series so that you can see whether if this is a series that you want to get into or not. And that is what I have done for myself, and it did make me realize that I do want to get into the series. Plus, it was just such a good book. It was so fast paced, very bingeable, and it's a collection of novellas, so you don't have to read it in one sitting, though you will read it in one sitting. It's that good. And when I was reading it, I think I was also filming a vlog for this, which is not going to see the light of the day because I scrapped it. But when I was reading it, I remember thinking to myself that this is so much like the Six of Crows duology. The writing style is so similar to it, but not just that, also the amount of adrenaline that this book pumped into me, absolutely crazy, and I actually cannot wait to read the entire series. The book is The Assassin's Blade by Sarah J. Maas. Just a collection of novellas has got me this excited. I don't know what will happen in the entire series. It's not only about one character. However, the glimpse that you get is that we have the assassin, who is literally the scariest, most dangerous assassin ever, and you see her going on these different journeys in different chapters in the different novellas, and you also get introduced to other characters. We see how the main character has now decided to put all of her faith within herself, because that is the most important if she wants to achieve what she wants to achieve. It's a very vague description, and honestly, like, I don't know how I'm going to explain this entire series when I do read it too, but all I can tell you is that if you enjoyed Six of Crows, then this is going to be your next best friend, and it's a lot of fun. The next fantasy book is also the first book in a series, and unfortunately I did not enjoy this one book within itself a lot, but it did convince me to start the entire series, and one character that I cannot stop thinking about. And it's great that this book is teenager friendly, because you guys are going to enjoy it a lot. I cannot imagine how much fun it would be for me to read this book if I was a teenager. It's a story of a dystopian world, and our main character is in jail since a very long time, and the twist is that one touch from this main female character can kill you. A lot of you might have already guessed which book it is, and the book is the book is Shatter Me. The series is the Shatter Me series, and the book is Shatter Me by Tahre Mafi. I really hope I'm taking the name right, and I think it is originally a trilogy or has 5 books in the original series, so I think you can only read that if you want. But if you get invested in the characters, you can read ahead too, and there are around 9 books, and a 10th one is about to come out this year, so it's a very extensive series. However, what I have gauged from the first book is that it's very bingeable. It's very easy to read. As an adult, I found this a little bit childish, for the lack of a better word. It's not like I don't like childish books, it's just that I got a little bit bored here and there. However, the writing in the book, there are so many places that I have underlined a lot of things, and the main male character did manage to gain my compassion and attention, and I started to care about her. She is, however, not the character that has been on my mind since I have left this series, and the only character that has actually convinced me to continue with this entire series is the villain of the story. I am thinking that the villain gets the girl. That trope is going to be there in this book. So if you enjoy slow burn and you like that trope and you're a teenager, this is going to be the best book for you. Another fantasy series recommendation, a fantasy romance. if you watch me, you must guess which book this is, and I always feel so happy that this is a teenager friendly book. I mean, there are so many topics in this which are like, you know, violent and whatnot, but there is no spice, nothing, and it's just really good slow burn romance, so it's going to be an absolute treat for you. The book I'm talking about is Powerless by Lauren Roberts. It's my absolute favorite slow burn enemies to lovers fantasy romance. This is the story of the elites and the ordinaries who are each other's enemy, except one of the elites and one of the ordinaries fall in love. It's very Hunger Game-esque. I as a character is just so charming, and he's just so beautiful, and he says the most beautiful things ever. So if you want that kind of a book, then this is the perfect one for you. It's quite thick, but again, you will read it in one sitting. I think I read it in 2 sittings, and obviously we also have the second part which I have already read. It's called Reckless. I'm just not the biggest fan of it, which is why I'm not recommending it over here, but the third book is going to come out in April itself. It's called Fearless, and I'm really hoping that it makes up for the second book, and the second book turns out to be very, very important once you read the third book, because the second book in the series, Reckless, is very couple focused on Kai and Payden, and it just lacks plot, and I don't enjoy that. Like, the only reason the romance in this was so extraordinary for me, is because there was so much plot also going on, there was so much tension going on, so that really contributed to the intensity of the slow burn romance going on between these two characters. In the second book, however, it's just so focused on these two characters, it gets a little repetitive. It's way more tropey than this book, so I'm really hoping that the third book makes up for it. In any case, even though I have my problems with the second book, I do highly recommend you read this series, at least the first book, to see whether you will enjoy these characters or not. Next fantasy recommendation is not a romance, but it's one of the best books that I've ever read. Again, I don't want to repeat my recommendations, but this book is just so good that it fits into almost every category. It's good for teenagers, it's bingeable, it's a fantasy book. There are so many reasons to read this book. It's such a beginner friendly book. It's one of the best books ever, and it is my 6-star read. Go ahead and you will not regret picking this book up, and I am so grateful to the people who actually recommended this book to me so many times, because you guys recommended it to me. That is why I have read this book. I'm here to return the favor and now recommend it to more people because it's just so good. The book is The House in the Cerulean Sea by T.J. Klune, and this is the first part. If you want, you can read the second book, which is Somewhere Beyond the Sea. I have not read that book yet, or you cannot read that book. It's your choice. This one is a story of Linus, who has a dream for himself, but he does not dare to dream no matter what. He has a day-to-day job that you can draw a parallel with the real world, like the corporate world. He keeps his head down. He does not want to step on any toes. He just wants to do his job and get out of work and just live his daily routine life, because he just doesn't have the courage to go ahead live his dream. However, one day a job forces him to go to the Cerulean Sea, the house in the Cerulean Sea, and that is so similar to his dream that even without wanting to, he finds himself going beyond the boundaries of his own mind and learning new things. There's so much more to it. If you watched other videos, you know more about the story that I have already described. But the reason I highly recommend this to teenagers, like literally every teenager needs to read this, is because this is the kind of world that I would want to live in my life. Okay, I know that this is a fantasy world, but it's so similar to the real world. It's insane. And the way one of the characters is opening Linus's mind, I wish you guys as teenagers are able to do that with adults and also future generations that are to come. And I know that's a big responsibility, okay, but this book will inspire you to do so. It will inspire you to have a big broad brain, a broad mind for yourself, an open mind for yourself, so that when you look at people, you don't judge them or whatever, like whatever you learn from this book. This is one of the biggest reasons why I love the teenage period so much, because that is the time when you can learn about society and you can actually do something to make a difference, and not by going out in the world and doing something big, even in your day-to-day action. And that is what this book teaches you, along with being a very cozy story. Okay, so it's just my hope that you read this book and you become a more patient person, a more tolerant person person, a kinder person, all of those things, because that's what this book does to you. This next one is also a fantasy book, but it also has literary fiction and thrillery aspects to it, which makes the book extremely bingeable. And I've got so many comments from you guys and DMs telling me that you love this book so much. Also, if you love books already, then it's going to be an absolute treat for you. It's such a great investment to buy this book because you'll think about this book all the time. And if you don't already love books, then read this book and you will know how important books are to book lovers, and maybe this will be the first book that gets you into reading. The book is The Book of Doors by Gareth Brown. I am so very lucky, like literally lucky, to have this big edition of it, and I mention it every time wherever I'm talking about this book because I just cannot believe that I have it. You know, I look at it in my shelf and I'm just like, I can't believe I have it. This is the story of The Book of Doors. If you have this book in your hand, any door is every door, and our main character gets her hands on it. She's just starting to use the book for herself and enjoy it for herself, except that because this book has powers, there are other people on the hunt for this book, and that is the thrillery aspect of this book. The reason I say it's literary fiction is because of how much it portrays the love of books and some lessons to live your day-to-day life with kindness and compassion, and more than that, wonder. This book infuses so much wonder into your brain, into your mind, into your imagination. That is literally the best thing you have as a human being. Your curiosity and your wonder for the world is what makes the world beautiful and interesting outside and inside you, in your heart and your mind. So that's why I am obsessed with this book. All of that wrapped up in a very cozy, yeah, it is cozy, in a very cozy, thrillery, adrenaline pumping fantasy story. Last fantasy series that I have for you is the Hunger Games trilogy. We have Hunger Games, Catching Fire, Mockingjay. This is the story of Katniss, who is pushed into the Hunger Games, and the only way to survive Hunger Games is to kill everybody else. I am pretty sure if you are a teenager, you have already read these books, or maybe it's like my generation thing, because when my generation was a teenager, they read these books. So this is me passing on the torch to you. If you are a teenager, read these books. It's such an essential part of being a teenager. Sadly, I was not one of the club members who read this book, because when I was a teenager, I was snobby and I thought reading is not cool enough, and I thought it's like the most boring thing ever. Why did I think that? Why did I do that to myself? I have missed out on so much wonder that I could have as a teenager if I only read books. Anyways, however, when I turned 25, I read these books and I still got so affected by these. I do not know how explosive it will be for you guys if you're reading it when you're a teenager. So go ahead, read these books. Super duper interesting. I always say this, you read the first book and it sort of ties in a lot of loose ends, but so you can only read the first book. But if you are invested in the characters, the second book is absolute fire, and it is the best one in the entire trilogy, so don't miss out on it. I have a historical fiction for you, and this is historical romance, so it's very, very historical. If you want a hint of romance in it, because that is what makes historical fiction interesting for you, then this is the perfect book for you. The book is Lovely War by Julie Berry, which is a story of two couples narrated by the Greek gods. Aphrodite is narrating the love story of two couples through both of these wars. This is one of the most vulnerable books that I have ever read, the most tender romance that I've ever read. I always think about romances, and sometimes it's like you have to convince yourself that yes, these two people are in love when you're reading a romance book. But when you read this one, it's so palpable that these two love each other, and it's so innocent. It's the most innocent book that I have ever read when it comes to the romance side of things, but also other emotions of friendship. There's female friendship, but there's also male friendship, and those emotions also are so palpable in the writing. There is no way that it won't pierce your heart. And I did not cry, I got teary-eyed when I was reading the book, but there are huge chances that you will cry too. So if you want a very, very emotional book, then this is the best one. And because the Greek gods are narrating the book, it also gets funny here and there, and then it gets intense sometimes, and then it gets romantic, and it gets emotional, and it's filled with grief, and the wars is just so much sorrow. There's so much in this book. It's awesome. So if you're a teenager, don't miss out on this one. Next one, to make it a little lighter, but this one also is quite an emotional story, we have Check-in Mate by Ali Hazelwood, which is her first YA romance book. I am feeling a little wary recommending this book because it does talk about, it's not spies, it does have mentions of things which I don't see in YA romances. It is a story of two young adults. They are both in the chess world. One of them is already very popular in the chess world. The second one is not popular, but she's a mastermind. While the romance is obviously endearing and beautiful, the reason this book is emotional is because of the main female character, her struggles that she has in her personal life with her family, and that literally made me cry. I woke up one morning, I was reading this book, I think last year in January, because Ali Hazelwood writes like really bingeable love stories, and this was a YA novel, and I was like, whoa, I want to see what this is, because YA is one of my favorite genres. And I did not expect myself to start crying first thing in the morning, but I did, because it was an emotional gut punch for me. It's also light and cozy in a lot of places, but it also does pack an emotional punch. So if you see adult Ali Hazelwood recommendations and you're like, oh, I wish I could read it as a teenager, this one has the same magic in her writing, but it's a young adult. Next up, I have a literary fiction for you guys, and this book is so important. Do read the trigger warnings before you read this book, because very intense topics have been discussed in the book. But this particular one by this author is so important for all teenagers to read. I beg of you, please read this book. It's a story of people who never talk to each other on a train, but something happens, somebody's about to die, because of which all of these characters start talking to each other. And as they talk to each other, they realize that, oh, I always thought that I have my own issue and that is the biggest problem on earth, but no, the other person has an issue too. The book is The People on Platform 5 by Claire Pooley. I cannot recommend this book enough for you as a teenager. Yet again, please read the trigger warnings, because it has intense topics talked about, but in a very simple, like easygoing way. That's one of the reasons why I did not give this book 5 stars when I read the book, because I just thought that the topics are so intense, I would want more intensity in the writing. It was just too light-hearted at some points. But now that I look back at it, I think that's what makes this book unique, because it's so important for us to read about those issues and read about these characters who can be so real, like people like this actually exist in the world, but it's cozy and it's light-hearted and it makes you emotional and happy and sad and whatnot. And there is one teenager in this book, like one of the characters is a teenager, and reading her perspective about life, it's so important. This book has multiple POVs in it, so you get to read the perspective of that teenager too, but also all of the other characters, and everything just comes together very well. Apart from that, we have Iona, who you can say is like the main character of the book, because she's so important to the story and she is going to be your idol. The dedication is to the daughter of this book, and it says, may you always be more Iona, and I want all of you guys to be more Iona, because I love you. Not like my daughter, because I'm not that old, but as your elder sibling, I love you guys so much, and I just really hope you will be more like Iona. Next up, I have another romance for you, but this also felt like a little bit of a literary romance also with... Okay, I love this book. Let me start from the beginning. This is the story of two rivals in school, and it's the last day of their school, and there is a last competition going on, and these rivals are like, okay, this is the last time that we're going to fight against each other, so I am going to win. Except that she is the one competing, he is just falling in love with her. Okay, and it's the most unfortunate part of this book is that you don't get the perspective of the main male character. Like, what are you doing to me? I really wish it was there. But apart from that, this is an absolute gem of a story, because of the romance trope that we have already. Okay, I love this trope so much. It's YA, so it has its innocence and vulnerability to it, but also this book somehow, the reason I'm saying it's literary is because it somehow talks about important topics wrapped up in this awesome love story. Topics like how women are judged for reading romance genre. I read this book and I just realized so much about that I miss out on a day-to-day basis. How different social backgrounds affect people when they are younger. Again, a very heavy and intense topic, but it's talked about so beautifully. Expectations from different genders, relationship with your parents, and it does not get boring, it does not get too informative, whatnot. So I highly recommend you read this book, not only for these things but also for the romance. It's an absolutely beautiful blend of these two things. It's a romance book with substance, and I really enjoyed it. The only thing, yet again, I feel wary of before recommending this book is that towards the end of the book it does have a spy scene, which I don't know why, if it's a YA romance novel. However, it's not extremely graphic. Next up, I have an adult romance recommendations. I'm gonna fly through it because of how much I've recommended this book, but it's so magical that you teenagers are to read it and have fun with it. Because I remember, okay, let me start again from the beginning. I'm just getting ahead of myself multiple times because I love these books so much. This is a story of a magical apartment that travels in time, 7 years in time, and our main female character meets our main male character in this magical apartment. This book reminds me of a movie called Just Like Heaven that I watched as a teenager, and that is a comfort movie for me that I watch as an adult too, and I have watched so many times as a teenager, even if it's adult romance, because it was so cute and so emotional. It just really fed the hopeless romantic in me, okay? And I need you to have high standards when it comes to romance. The book is The 7-Year Slip by Ashley Poston. You can see the annotations. Apart from being a great romance, it's also written very well, and this is the only adult romance that I will recommend to you guys. So if you are like, oh, I want to read an adult romance but I am a teenager, this is the perfect book for you because it has no spice. And if you enjoy this, by the way, also do watch Just Like Heaven. I think it's available on Netflix, which is my comfort movie. I love that movie. Now let's move on to a little bit of a sad, tragic side of things. First of all, I Fell in Love with Hope by Lankali, which is a story of all of these kids who are in a hospital, almost like terminal diseases. I don't remember much, but they have terminal diseases. They don't know what is going to happen tomorrow, and you see them live life through that in this hospital. The writing is beautiful, a little complicated sometimes, but beautiful. The way it's written is complicated and it's a little bit patchy, but once you get the hang of it, it's beautiful, and the quotes, all of them beautiful. It also does get very emotional, and it's extremely tragic, and it's extremely triggering. So please read the trigger warnings before you get into this, because it was very heavy for me to read, okay? But if you want a sad book recommendation that's heavy for you to read, then this is the perfect one. Then if you have watched my previous videos and you have read If He Had Been With Me, and you are like, oh, I want more books like that, then you have the next part, If Only I Had Told Her by Laura Nowlin, which is just way more tragic than the first book, if you ask me. I just can never talk about this book without tearing up. This has a perspective of Finn in it, which we all wanted in the first book, but it also has a perspective of two other characters. Now I know a lot of people were not expecting that to happen, but I'm sorry that the perspective of those two characters has just made this entire, like, the duology insanely impactful for me, because everything that happened in the first book, we see it from one perspective and we don't even see it a lot, right? In the second book, you see the aftermath, and it's insane. It's absolutely insane. Speaking of books that you have read and now you want more of them, we have Nothing Like the Movies by Lynn Painter, which is the second part that comes after Better Than the Movies by Lynn Painter. Is a story of Liz and Wes. I'm not gonna get deep into the plot of the story, but I am absolutely in love with this book. I actually have a reading vlog of it. I'll put in the description for you to watch, because I have spoken so much about it in that. But the reasons I love this book is because you get Wes's perspective in it, which is something I really wanted in Better Than the Movies. Secondly, Wes as a character is just absolutely adorable. I already liked him so much when I was reading the first book, but now that I got his perspective and the things that have happened to him and I've seen all of it, I just love him so much more. Liz in this book is quite annoying. Also, nothing like the movie. So how Better Than the Movies is actually like this fluffy romance, this does have its fluffy aspect to it, but it's nothing like the movie. So shit gets real in this book. So if you've read Better Than the Movies and you want more of Liz and Wes, this is your book. Next, I have a Japanese literature fiction recommendation for you. Again, I highly encourage you, like I really urge you to read this book. So important. The book is The Lantern of Lost Memories by Sanaka Hiragi, and it's translated by Jessie Kirkwood. This is the story of this lantern that when you put pictures in it, it will show your entire life. So anytime somebody dies, they wake up in this place and they see their entire life. Their entire life basically flashes in front of them. In the beginning you feel like it's a collection of short stories. It is not. It does connect with each other, and by the end of it, it will leave you with a knot in your chest because of how emotional it gets. And in the beginning it's very cozy and cute. As you go ahead, it becomes more and more emotional. You are looking for one Japanese fiction book that you should read, or you have read the most popular Before the Coffee Gets Cold series, and you're like, I want something like that, something cozy like that, something emotional like that, then this is the perfect book for you. Next up, I have a series which is a mystery romance series. You can't put it in a box, and it is the Inheritance Games trilogy. As you go ahead in this series also, it gets graphic and intense. However, it is a YA series, so you can read it. Also, as a teenager, if you are interested in trivia and puzzles and games, and you will enjoy the series a lot. It's a story of Avery, who inherits a huge amount of money from a man who dies, and his own family is like, what is going on? And Avery is like, what is going on? Because she's literally a random woman. We see what happens with that, what all games are being played after that. First book, very mystery, thriller, gamey, fun. Second book, very, very emotional. Third book, again extremely gamey. This one is my least favorite, but if you're into trivia and games, the third book will be your favorite. Overall, very binge worthy, very fun. And if you want to just invest yourself into one world after your exams, then this is the perfect world to invest yourself in. In the end, I have another Japanese literature fiction recommendation for you. It's called What You're Looking For Is in the Library, which is the story of this library, and it's sort of like a collection of short stories, but it does tie up together again, and you don't have to read it all at once. You can if you want to, but I recommend you read like one story a day or two stories a day in the morning with your breakfast or whatever, or before you go to sleep, because it's very cozy and it's very, very inspiring. It's a story of these people who are feeling lost in their life, and they just somehow end up at this library, and the librarian over there recommends them books, which those tiny, like, reading those books makes very tiny shifts in their life, and that changes the course of their life somehow. I love this book because of how cozy it is, obviously, but also how sometimes we expect books to have like this life-changing impact on you because they tell you something completely like mind-boggling. But this book shows you how it doesn't have to be something extremely mind-boggling for you to change your life, for you to change it, literally the trajectory of your life. Sometimes it can be a cookbook, and it will literally change the way you look at your own life. That's just how important this book is. So if you're looking for a short story collection, this is the perfect book for you. And with that, I think we have come towards the end of this video. I really hope you enjoyed it and you got at least one recommendation out of it. If you are a teenager and you have some YA recommendations for me, leave it in the comments, because I'm looking for good books. And if you're an adult, I hope you enjoyed these books too, because I enjoyed all of these as an adult. I'll see you guys again in the next one. Bye.